There was a very well-known comedy show a few years ago in the UK, which was called the Catherine Tate Show, from the brilliant comedian Catherine Tate. And there was a character in her show that was called Lauren. You don't know if you remember her. And she was played by Catherine Tate, but she was a teenager. Her arms were always folded. She always had a deadpan face. And she had this catchphrase, which was, "Am I bothered? Am I bothered?" Right. And that's my attempt at her accent. Please forgive me for butchering it. And the reality was that even though she was saying, "Am I bothered? Am I bothered?" she was actually always completely bothered, even though she was saying effectively that she wasn't. And that was the joke. It was funny because it was true. She was bothered, even though she was pretending she wasn't. And I think, if we're being honest, most of us can do exactly the same thing. We can be walking around saying that we're fine, but quietly, we can be a little bit bothered by the amount of work that we have, by the emails that we have, by traffic, by that one comment by a person in a meeting or in our personal life. Nothing major, just a low hum of bothersomeness all day long. And here's what's interesting. I think almost nobody questions it. And I think there's a simple but very profound idea here that bother isn't coming from life. It's coming from how you're thinking about life. Because the truth is that two people can go through the exact same situation, the same troublesome email, the same delay, the same difficult person, but one person gets bothered and the other just doesn't. And the difference isn't what happened, it's what's happening in their thinking in that moment. And I think here's the element that most people miss. They don't see bother as a problem. They just see bother as being normal, even justified. If I was talking about it to the average person, I think they'd say, well, of course, Shane, if things don't go my way, of course I'm going to get bothered. What else would I do? But what if that's not the only option? What if it's not actually true? What if being bothered is just a mental habit, an unhelpful one at that we've never questioned? And I think it is unhelpful, and I think it has a cost, and it's not a small cost. That's what I realized myself. Because when you're bothered and you allow yourself to keep getting bothered, your thinking tightens. You get more reactive. You're less clear. And because of that, you're more likely to make a decision that you regret or behave a certain way or say something that you regret. When you're bothered in your relationships, you're less present, you're less patient. And then unfortunately, the people around you get a slightly diminished version of you. And I'm not immune to that. I've done that. I've learned the hard way, and it can still catch me out. And when you're bothered, especially with your energy, bother drains you consistently. It's not necessarily very dramatic all the time, but if it's daily working away, it just is sucking actually the life out of you. Now think about your phone. And actually, a few years ago, my kids showed me this. I think I'm reasonably good on tech, but the kids are obviously better because there was one day a few years ago where my son Sam showed me the amount of apps that were running in the background that I hadn't even thought about. They were just open. I hadn't realized they were open, and I didn't realize that you had to close them out because he was saying it uses up the battery. And the apps being open weren't causing a major problem. I could still make calls. I could still send messages. I could still use the phone. But what they were doing without me realizing was they were drawing down on the battery charge quietly, constantly. And I think it's a good analogy to look at in terms of like low level bother works exactly the same way. It's not going to stop you working, and it's not the thing that's going to crash your system. But it is the thing that means at the end of the day, you're more drained than you think you should be, and you're just not sure why. I know a couple of people who, for example, when they get into a car, they're really, really calm, nice people, good people. When they get in a car, they change personalities and they become a demon. And they're always bothered. It doesn't take much for them to start shouting and swearing at somebody else driving a different car. I mean, I'm always shocked at how they transform. It's like a Jekyll and Hyde characters is what they are. And stay with the car theme. Let's take a real scenario. Like, let's say you drive across town and you're going to your favorite restaurant. So you're in traffic. It takes some time. There's a bit of effort to get there, and you're looking forward to it. You arrive, and then it's closed. Now, in that moment, you have a choice. Okay, choice. Door number one is you stew on it. You let it affect your mood for the next hour. It ruins the rest of your evening. But the other option is, oh, well, c'est la vie. Where else can we go? Now, it's the same situation, but you're going to get a completely different experience depending on which choice you take mentally. You know, the closed sign on the restaurant door didn't create the bother. It was the thinking that created the bother. Now, think about two leaders maybe going through the exact same week. Maybe they have the exact same pressures, the same people problems, the same problems in general, the same demands on their time. And one can carry a low hum of irritation through all of it. They're just getting bothered by everything. Everybody's annoying them. Everything is annoying them. They're just carrying this irritation inside them. But then the other leader isn't. They're just not getting bothered. They're not going with the bothersome thinking at all. Who do you think thinks more clearly? Who do you think is going to handle hard conversations better? Who do you think is going to make the better call under pressure? I don't think it's even close. I think logically, when we step back and look at that, we kind of know, yeah, okay, being bothered does actually have a cost. It does have a cost. And some of that cost can be very, very big. So what about you? You know, if you notice yourself getting bothered today, tomorrow, this week, here's a kind of maybe a 3-step reset you can experiment with. And I think it's quite simple, but it's quite also profound if you go with it. The first one is to notice. So just notice it. Just say to yourself, oh, I'm a bit bothered right now. Yeah, okay, I'm getting bothered. And it could be as simple as you being in a coffee line. Maybe somebody's messing up your order. Maybe the coffee queue is going really slow. I mean, there's no end to where you can get bothered. Maybe somebody is saying something that really bothers you, but just notice it. Okay, I'm a bit bothered. I can feel it. No judgment. Just be aware of the feeling of being bothered. Then the second thing is remind yourself where it's actually coming from, that feeling. As in, okay, this is my thinking. This isn't the situation. This isn't the person. This is my thinking, which is generating the feeling. And weirdly, that alone creates a bit of space. And that space is important. It's like a gap between you, your awareness, what I would call the inner CEO, and that feeling, your thinking that's creating the feeling. So that's step 2. And then the third step is just consciously loosen your grip. As in, for example, you can say to yourself, okay, these things happen. What's the next simple thing I can do here? Or maybe just let it go. You just don't need to fix anything. You just need to soften and loosen your grip. And you'll often find the feeling then just settles on its own if you don't allow yourself to go with that winding up motion that a bothersome reaction can bring. So that's the 3-step process. And here's some extra questions then that I think are worth sitting with around this kind of idea of being bothered. How much of your day is spent being slightly bothered? Like not in a crisis situation, not a major bother, but like just carrying a low level of irritation. Like how much your day has been spent. I think you might find a lot of it's higher than what you might expect. And what decision did you make last week, for example, that would have gone differently without that background noise? As I'm asking that question of you, I'm asking it of myself. And I can think of a couple of the areas in my life where I allowed myself to get bothered, or get onto the bothersome train. And yeah, it affected maybe a couple of decisions or a couple of things that I said or didn't say. Another question is, who in your life maybe is getting a less present version of you because of low level bother? Maybe there's some sort of irritation inside you whenever you think about them, whenever you're with them. And think about it, that means you're less present. So you're not going to be the best version of you. And then maybe think of another one where you might be treating bother as being justified. As in, Shane, that's fine for you to say that, but like in this area of my life where this person is totally justified, they wind me up. But what actually is just a habit. It's just a habit of being bothered. I know many people who actually always feel they need to be bothered at something. It might be a president. It might be a politician. It might be just a decision that somebody made, but they're always bothered at something. And they just don't realize, again, like the apps open on the phone, that it's actually robbing them of the most important element, which is their energy. So here's maybe the key idea to take away with you is most people assume bother is the natural response to a difficult life or to difficult people. But it's not coming from people and it's not coming from life. It's being created by us in the moment by our thinking, by the attention that we give to our thinking. And what that means then is that we're not at the mercy of it. So it's not the big problems that drain most people. It's the constant low-level bother that they never thought to question. And in that way, to me anyway, bother is optional. And most people just never noticed that it was. That's it for this week. Ciao for now.